we're using old software development techniques to build these features, and we're not actually taking full advantage of what AI can do. I think the promise of AI for many of us is that it allows us to build software that the user can program to do whatever they want using only natural language.
Steve Jobs described software as a bicycle for the mind. This feels like, I don't know, like a rocket ship for the mind.
Welcome to another episode of The Breakdown. Today, we're lucky to have Pete Kumin, our partner here at YC. Pete was the founder of Optimizely, which built software to help companies A/B test. Pete, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So Pete, you recently wrote an essay which caused a bit of a stir and basically told everyone on the internet who was building AI agents they were doing it completely wrong. So tell us more about that.
Sure. When I use AI in my day-to-day life, I've kind of had two radically different experiences, right? On one hand, when I use tools like Cursor and Windsurf to build software with AI, it feels like the most powerful tool I've ever used, right? It's this feeling of being able to create anything I want, anything I can picture in my head, will materialize in front of me with these tools. And it makes me so excited about AI. And then I've had a lot of other experiences. A lot of times when I'm using existing apps that I'm used to that have incorporated AI into them, where it doesn't feel that way at all. It actually feels like more of a chore, right? Like using the AI actually creates more work for me than just doing whatever it was myself. The example that I chose in my essay was to pick on the integration that the Gmail team built between their AI model, Gemini, and Gmail's interface. That this is a little draft writing agent that can create email drafts for me, given some instructions.
Yeah, and the underlying Gemini model is pretty phenomenal, right?
Gemini is amazing. The model itself is absolutely incredible. We've been using it a lot at YC to automate our own work. I'm so impressed with what they built. Yeah. But a lot of that power, I think, is hidden behind a UI that makes it really frustrating to use. And that was really the focus of my essay. The feature that I chose as my example was this little draft writing agent that shows up in the Gmail interface. And what it does is I can put in some instructions. So in this case, let my boss, Gary, know that my daughter woke up with the flu this morning and I won't be able to come into the office today. And it will spit out an email draft for me.
To make your life easier.
To make my life easier, exactly. So here is the email draft that I got when I put that prompt into the UI. Dear Gary, I'm writing to inform you that my daughter woke up with the flu this morning. As a result, I won't be able to come into the office today. Thank you for understanding. Best regards, Pete.
And if I got this, I'd be like, Pete has his brain taken over by
or he's been phished and I need to report phishing, like something's going horribly wrong.
Pete's account's been hacked, right? There's two big problems with this. The first problem is, like you're pointing out, that doesn't sound anything like me, right? If you got this email, you would assume somebody else wrote this. My account got hacked. I got phished. And then the second problem is that the draft, or rather the prompt that I used to explain what I wanted in the draft is roughly as long as the draft itself. Yeah. That was my contention here, right? On one side, you have using AI makes you feel like a superhuman with unlimited powers. And on the other hand, using AI is frustrating and adds more work.
Maybe we're jumping ahead a little bit, but the ideal experience, I think, would be something like telling the AI, hey, my daughter's ill, like figure out my calendar today, and then go through your actual calendar and then figure out each person and then write the appropriate email in the appropriate tone, right? Perhaps we're skipping all the way to the end, but
I think that's exactly right. These AI models are now capable of doing things like that, where it's actually anticipating all of the things that will need to happen as a result of my daughter waking up with the flu and helping me do those things. Yeah. But that's not what we've built, right? That's not what the team has built.
So Pete, like the people who work on Gmail, I know a lot of them, they're not dunces, right?
Not at all. Yeah.
They probably don't use the feature themselves, is my guess, because I don't use that feature. So how did we get here? Like, how did this happen?
I know many people who work for Google, they're incredibly smart. Why did they ship a feature that ostensibly nobody, including probably them, actually uses? I don't know. Part of the problem is that we're using old software development mentality, old software development techniques to build these features, and we're not actually taking full advantage of what AI can do. And so I'll explain what I mean by that, right? And I'll go back to these two problems. Let's start with the tone problem, right? This doesn't actually sound like me. Why is that? Well, what's actually happening under the hood when I ask this Gmail agent for a draft is that this Gmail agent, this little UI, combines my prompt, which is the one we just talked about, with what's called a system prompt. And the system prompt is the text that explains to the AI who it is and what its job is. And this gets reused every single time. And in the Gmail case, I don't actually know what that system prompt says. It's been hidden from the user. I'm not allowed to see it, let alone edit it myself. But we can kind of guess what it says, right? And I've got a little caricatured version of this in the essay. The system prompt here is something like, you're a helpful email writing assistant responsible for writing emails on behalf of a Gmail user. Follow the user's instructions and use a formal, businessy tone and correct punctuation so that it's obvious the user is really smart and serious. I actually built a little demo so that you can see the impact of a system prompt on the email draft, right? And so we combine our sort of supposed Gmail system prompt with my user prompt here, asking for the draft, and we generate the draft. And we get something like this, right? Again, it's an email that seems perfectly reasonable. It does what I've asked, but it doesn't sound like me.
So just digging in, like we are guessing what the system prompt might be in this case.
Totally.
But it seems we've guessed close because the output is basically what you get when you use Gmail.
Relatively similar, yeah.
And so like, just to point out, the system prompt that we have created here is one that is generic. It would apply to all users in exactly the same way. It's one that's like safe. You've explicitly told it, use a businessy tone, look smart and serious, don't say anything that might make the parent company of this product look bad.
And that's got to be the overriding concern for a lot of these companies, right? We don't want the AI to say anything that's going to embarrass Google. I remember it was either Google or Facebook released a scientific model like pretty early on, and then very, very quickly pulled it back because it was saying it was hallucinating sometimes.
Yes.
And so I think Google were really on the cutting edge of this transformer technology and were leapfrogged by OpenAI just because they were too cautious to put stuff out there.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's probably a big part of this, which is that, my little supposed version here is probably incomplete. There's probably a whole bunch of additional text in the real system prompt about not embarrassing Google and all of the different things it should avoid doing.
If you say anything bad about Sundar, you're fired.
And we've seen this recently as these system prompts kind of get leaked at times. And it's a big deal because everybody's like, ooh, we see the system prompt now for this AI assistant or this one. And if you read those system prompts, they're quite elaborate. And they have direct instructions to avoid certain problems.
You can see the mark of the HR team in that system prompt.
I think there's a deeper issue here, which is that we're designing features like this in a way that looks a lot like software that we've been building for decades, right? And so just to illustrate what's possible, let's imagine that Gmail allowed me to not only see, but edit this system prompt for myself. I might write a version that instead of saying you are a generic Gmail writing, email writing agent, my version might just say you're Pete, right? You're a 43-year-old husband, you're a father, you're a YC partner, you're busy, and so is everyone you correspond with, and so you do your best to keep emails as short as possible, right? What I've done here is I just take the little program in my brain that is used for writing emails, and I've done my best to explain to Gemini how I do that. And if you just take that same user prompt asking for a draft of an email, explaining that my daughter's sick, and you use my system prompt rather than the generic one-size-fits-all Gmail system prompt, the draft we get, hi, Gary, my daughter's sick with the flu, so I can't come in today, thanks. That sounds like an email that I would have written.
Totally.
By editing this system prompt, I'm able to explain to the AI model how I write emails in general so that I don't have to do it every single time. And so going back to your question, why did the Gmail team decide to hide this system prompt away? My contention is that a lot of AI app developers, including the Gmail team in this case, are treating the system prompt the same way they've been treating code for decades. For, as long as we've had a software industry, there's been a division of labor between me, the user, and you, the developer.
The user does not see the code.
User doesn't see the code. The developer is the one who is responsible for building the system, defining the system. It's all hidden away and it's abstracted behind an interface that I can point and click around to do something.
It's more or less one-size-fits-all software.
That's the only way we've been able to build software up until now is one size fits all, right? If you're building an online bank software or a piece of A/B testing software, your job as a developer is to go and talk to hundreds or thousands of users and synthesize all of their needs together into one common set of features that you're going to build in your one-size-fits-all piece of software.
Sort of lowest common denominator software.
Exactly. And that's, I think, the Gmail system prompt in this case, you can think of as the lowest common denominator email writer. It's the safe, anyone could use this thing, but what it results in is emails that no individual would actually write.
Yeah, no one's getting fired, but this is not software that's going to take over the world.
That's exactly right.
You think that developers today are using AI in the previous generation of software development that they've been used to?
Yes.
And so you use this phrase, the AI horseless carriage.
Yes.
Maybe tell us what you mean by that.
And this is a reference to early automobile designs that looked a lot like carriages with the horse replaced with an engine, right? And there were all sorts of problems with that design. For example, there's less suspension on carriages, which didn't work running at high speeds with a vibrating motor, right? The center of gravity was higher, which made turns harder at high speeds. Basically, inventing the motor was only a small part of what was needed to produce a vehicle that could take advantage of the motor's
It only became
power.
useful once you redesigned the entire.
That's exactly right, right?
Yeah, and this phenomena we see over and over and over again in technology. Like some ones that I have lived through when the internet came about. A lot of the first search engines were literally just like digitized yellow pages. It was just a directory of listings. And now, of course, we think like that's silly.
Kind of like Craigslist, right? It's just like
that's what it started with.
Yeah.
When mobile came out, the first mobile apps, or a lot of the first mobile apps, were basically just websites wrapped in a native app wrapper. But they didn't take advantage of any of the new technologies available on the mobile phone, like GPS, like multi-touch. And it takes a few years typically to get to the useful bit of the new technology. And I guess what you're claiming, Pete, is we are like not there yet.
I think the deepest problem here is that when the Gmail team set out to build this, they kind of asked, how can we slot AI into the Gmail application?
How do we replace the horse and put an engine in?
That's exactly right. And the problem with that is that Gmail is an application designed for humans to do work in, right? The real promise of AI, I think for many of us, is using AI to automate repetitive, busy work, right? And a lot of the time I spend on email is repetitive, busy work, right? It's work that doesn't really need my full brain power, but because we haven't had the technology, requires it, right? And so I give a little example in my essay of just using these simple techniques, what you could do with an email inbox. And here's that example. So this is an example of an email inbox. It's got a bunch of messages on the right-hand side, and there's an agent operating in this inbox, and instead of an email writing agent, it's an email reading agent. On the left-hand side here, you can see this is a system prompt that I wrote that just tells this agent what to do with each email. And the agent can assign a label to an incoming email. It can archive it. It can put a color on that label, and it can write a draft, right? Those are the things this agent can do, and my instructions are just what to do for each email. So if the email is from my wife, draft a reply and label it personal. If it's from my boss, draft a reply and make it priority 1, right? Which is just one notch lower than emails from my wife. And for anyone else at YC, where I work, a YC label and give it priority 2, right? If it's from a founder who needs help, call it, put a founder's label on it, make it, right? This is my sort of internal, again, mental model for how I organize my email. And I'm just explaining to Gemini how I do this work so that it can do it on my behalf.
One thing I find interesting about this is really the code. This is the programming you are doing for this agent. But if you read it, it's pretty accessible, right? It says, if it's a tech-related email, label it tech. If it's somebody trying to sell me something, archive it. And this is like a great example of how the LLM technology is actually good enough to let non-programmers program these apps.
The way that I think of these models, a super smart fresh grad right out of college that can do anything pretty well, but has no idea what to do.
Yeah.
And the missing step is giving me the ability to teach it how to do work that I don't want to do, which is what I've done here. And you're right, it's completely accessible. One of the sort of pieces of pushback I got when I started talking about letting users just write their own system prompts was like, well, most people aren't technical. They don't know how to do that, which I think is true. This isn't a skill we're born with, but in doing this myself, I've found it really intuitive. It's basically like thinking of the way that I make a decision and then trying to explain to this AI model how to do it. And as long as you can kind of watch it do the job and give it feedback by adjusting this prompt, it's pretty intuitive. And so, for example, here's what happens when I apply this little agent to each one of the emails in this inbox.
Amazing.
I love this. This is an essay, but it's not static. I love the fact that you've built this little widget so people can actually go in, they can edit the system prompt themselves to kind of reformat it the way they want and rerun it. I think it's such a smart way to convey this kind of idea.
One of my favorite things is building demos, and this felt like an intuitive way to start talking about some of these concepts. And this is just another example of how powerful AI makes you feel when you're building with it, when you're just interacting with these models.
How did you build this, by the way?
I vibe coded the whole thing. So I wrote, this is, ironically enough, these AI models are not actually that useful to help you write things from scratch, right? The part where I used AI was describing a demo that I thought would help communicate the point I was trying to make, and then watching it appear, right? Like it's absolutely magical.
It's astonishing how good these, especially the coding agents. I mean, I rebuilt my entire, I was on Tumblr and I migrated my blog to custom software I wrote in 1 hour on a train journey. The coding agents especially just seem so far ahead of all the other general purpose agents right now.
Yes. And to me, we will have caught up when everybody has the same experience that we have when we're using these coding agents in their particular domain, right? Yeah. And so when accountants can build accounting agents that do just all of the repetitive workflows on their behalf, when lawyers can build lawyering agents that do the repetitive workflows on their behalf, it's basically every profession, I think, will have its cursor moment or its windsurf moment.
Why is Cursor, Windsurf, or Claude Code so far ahead of lawyer agents or accounting agents?
I think there's two reasons. The first is that these AI models are incredibly good at processing text, right? So if I can write a good description of a thing I want, they can process that description, that prompt, and turn it into a bunch of code, right? This is going back to why it was so annoying to write that original email prompt, is like, these agents aren't good at writing from scratch. They're good at processing instructions and doing and turning them into some text output, right? For code, that's actually really useful, right? If I can describe in English what I'm looking for, an agent can output code that does this, and it's remarkably effective. This is just a domain where these agents are really powerful. I think the other reason, though, is that developer tools are power tools, right? Developer tools, by definition, allow you to get to the bare metal, right? To get under the hood of whatever it is you're working with. And so the teams that built these tools allowed me full access to have this agent do whatever I wanted it to do. They didn't spend a lot of time making sure that I didn't do anything that was embarrassing to Windsurf or embarrassing to anyone. I'm allowed to just interact directly with the model and use the full power. Yeah. Whereas I think a lot of other domains, we're still using this sort of like kid glove mentality of like, oh, don't let them use the full power of these models. I hope we're able to move beyond this moment in time where there's so much assumed liability on the part of the application developers for what these models do.
Well, I think the interesting point is if you do change the model where the user is in charge or at least has access to the system prompt, then the repercussions of that are on the user and not on the company that built the tool.
Yeah, right? It's like Google put Gmail out, and if you write an email full of profanity, that's on you, right? Yeah. Like exactly the same way. Like if you change the system prompt to act like a violent jerk, like that's on you. That's not on Google.
Yeah, it's a shift in mentality, giving AI to the user as a tool, and they can use it for whatever their purposes are, versus feeling like you as a developer have to be responsible for everything these models output, and therefore you nerf it, and it's not useful.
So I broadly agree with everything you've said so far, but I had some questions. And the first one is, do you think the vast majority of people are able to write these kind of system prompts?
I think the answer today is no. But I think the answer to that in the near future will be yes.
And why is that?
When I was growing up, computers were still seen as a power tool that only nerds really knew how to use, right? And today that's just no longer the case. All of us use computers all the time. It's no longer like remarkable or interesting for somebody to be able to use a computer, right? And so what happened is we all just sort of figured out how to use these things, and the interfaces got better, right? It's the tech got better, and we learned how to use it in time, and so it is unremarkable, right? And I think the same thing is going to happen with prompting. So I think this is actually going to happen a lot faster with prompting, because writing a prompt is a lot more accessible than, operating your file system manager on your computer. You don't need to understand much except to be able to explain yourself in English or whatever language you speak. Having done this several times myself now, it's surprisingly intuitive, right? Thinking about, okay, how do I write an email, right? It's a bit of a toy example, but it's kind of fun. You can write your little internal algorithm for it, and then you can watch. And if it gets the tone right, your system prompt is right.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that. I think basically everyone will be able to do this. I'm not sure everyone will want to or to have the initiative or agent. Like, we're three founders sitting here. We love to tinker with this stuff. Like, you're telling me about your mum using...
like my mom uses Gmail every day, but is she going to write a system prompt? Like, probably not.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I've learned not to be pessimistic about what users can learn. But I agree with the point, Rich, is that I don't think I'd want to write my own email writing system prompt from scratch. I'd like to have that option, right? But I've been using Gmail for 20 years, right? And there are 20 years of my email history that a good product could use to create a draft prompt for me, right?
The idea that, let's take a human analogy. You hire a new employee, you hire an assistant. The idea that you're going to sit down and write out 30 pages of instructions about how you do every single thing in your life is possible, but none of us actually do it. You give this gradual training. And if they were able to go through and read all your previous emails, they kind of learn. And then you kind of interact with them step by step, and they write a few emails and you check the drafts. And when you're comfortable, you say, I didn't want to check the drafts anymore, send it. And then if you spot something that's not quite right, you say, oh, no, I would have phrased that this way or this other way. And the human would take that feedback and edit their own system prompt.
So Pete, you've been actually doing this at YC, right? You've built some internal tools that our finance team or our legal team uses. And it feels like the interaction has been exactly what Tom just described, where you literally go sit next to a finance person and you ask them, like, hey, tell me how you do this workflow, like, show me what you do. And then you write some system prompt for them. They try it. It doesn't do it quite right. They edit the system prompt with you. So it's kind of this like back and forth iterative model that you're suggesting.
Yeah. And I'd go further than that. I think there's like a missing tool in AI app development, which is like, not everyone has a Pete sitting next to them, but you could have an AI system prompt writer sitting next to you to take, you say, no, this wasn't right, or I would have rewritten it like this, and it will translate that back into a system prompt and kind of self-edit or auto-update.
Absolutely, right. And these are great examples of UI conventions that we just haven't figured out yet, right? And you can see people are experimenting with different models here. Some of the foundation model labs have started building memory into their chatbots, right? That's one mechanism for taking context that I've shared over time and storing it forever, right? I haven't had great experiences with that because, again, it's treated like a black box where I can't actually see what it has internalized and what it's stored. My big contention here is that because this is all just English, we no longer have to treat these things like black boxes.
The system prompt is almost like this document that you don't have to edit if you don't want to, but at the limit, if there's something really goes wrong, you can go in and tinker with it if you want. But probably for most people, the AI will auto-generate it. It will look through your previous work to customize it to you and take your feedback on an ongoing basis to kind of edit the system prompt. And, the kind of break glass case is you go and edit the file and be like, no, I really don't want this to happen. But I'd suggest, I think in 5 years, for 99% of people, they're not touching their system prompt, but the system prompt is custom to them.
I think that's possible. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out. Some of the work that we've done at YC, building agents to automate some of the repetitive work that we and our teammates do on a regular basis, actually suggests to me that writing prompts is going to be part of the day-to-day flow for a lot of people.
I agree in the short term, but I think my contention is like there's a higher level of abstraction on top of system prompt writing. You shouldn't actually have to go and edit the system prompt, that you're able to like nudge or like say, no, okay, here's a new term sheet. That's a new term we've never seen before. And here's how I would think about it. And the AI goes, thank you very much. I will take that, distill it down into system prompt and auto edit the system prompt, rather than Alex having to look up this like 50-page document and go like, I'm going to change that specific line. You know what I mean? It's like a level of abstraction on top of raw dogging the system prompt.
I think we'll probably have tools that make it easier to teach an AI over time,
Yes.
rather than going up and editing, a 10 or 50-page prompt every single time you want to do this. And I hope that developers stop treating these prompts like black boxes.
I agree.
Being able to look at the ground truth of what this agent is being instructed to do on my behalf is incredibly valuable, and it seems to be totally missing from a lot of applications.
I 100% agree with that.
So we've been talking a lot about the prompting,
Yes.
right? And Tom is kind of saying like there's going to be a bunch of innovation on how we write system prompts or how we edit them or iterate on them. In the essay, you also talk about tooling, which I think is a really important and interesting topic as well. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, sure. So if developers aren't the ones who have to write all these system prompts from scratch, what are they going to focus on? I think the promise of AI for many of us is that it gives us software, or it allows us to build software that the user can program to do whatever they want using only natural language. The thing that these agents need in order to be able to do anything useful, we call tools. If we go back to my little email reading agent here, the tools that this agent has access to are a tool for labeling an email, a tool for archiving an email, and a tool for writing a draft. Yeah. You could imagine many other tools that would make this agent more powerful and more able to do a lot of the busy work that I have to spend my own time on right now, right? And so a lot of the emails I get are not emails that take a lot of my brain power to handle, but they just need to get done. Paying bills, right? Doing introductions and handoffs, right? The number of times that I've had to create a draft and put this, a certain person in BCC, and like, it's maddening to have to do this stuff over and over again. The point is that an email in a lot of ways is like my inbox. It's my to-do list or a whole bunch of chores in life, right? The very few emails that I write are really heartfelt, original thinking. A lot of it is sort of transactional, and with tools, this email reading agent could handle a lot of that.
Especially across things like Slack and your calendar and your Notion or your Jira or your Linear or whatever.
Yes.
There's a company in the current batch called Den, basically building Cursor for knowledge work that's trying to chain together all of these different MCP servers, which is basically a way to call tools for agents. So that if your boss, your bossy sends you a message on Slack and says, hey, review these terms and conditions. You pull it from Google Docs, you review it. Maybe the AI sends it via email to your legal team, they review it, and then you publish it via GitHub. And all of this is controlled via one place with kind of agents calling these tools from different places. And you just sort of sit back. It's like Steve Jobs describes software as a bicycle for the mind. This feels like, I don't know, like a rocket ship for the mind.
It's incredibly powerful, right? And we built an early version of this inside of YC, and we're already seeing employees of YC automate parts of their job that are easy to automate. And the difference that these tools provide is it takes an agent, which previously could only be basically like a Q&A, right? A question and answer thing, into something that can go off and accomplish things in the world on your behalf.
Yeah, I kind of hate the kind of chatbot paradigm. Like, it was the easiest, it was the way to bring the most basic LLM experience to the whole world. We had GPT before ChatGPT, and ChatGPT brought it to the mainstream, but now every product is just embedding this chat agent in it. It's like, that's not the way this stuff should be used in almost every case.
I totally agree. Because we started with chatbots, a lot of us developers and users are sort of anchored in this place where the thing that LLMs are great at is producing text. Where I think what we're trying to argue here is these LLMs are capable of automating work on our behalf, accomplishing things in the world on our behalf so that we don't have to. And that's the promise.
And I think that's an amazing future. I look forward to it.
Me too.
This has been so interesting, Pete. How do you think founders should be thinking about this when building their companies?
That's a great question. I think this is one of the most exciting times to be a founder, because almost every tool that we've been using for decades can be rethought from the ground up with AI. And I think the AI native version of a lot of tools will look different from the versions we're used to using, right? What I showed here looks pretty different from an email client that I've been using for most of my life.
Yeah, so they've got to go beyond simply like embedding a chatbot inside their existing product.
Yes. Instead of asking, how do I insert AI into my tool? It's how would I design this tool from scratch to offload as much repetitive work from the user as possible so they can focus on what's important.
All right, Pete, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
See you on the next episode.